you're new here, that's me. My name's May, and this is episode 5 of Knit With Me, a weekly knitting podcast / video series where I share all my crafty projects from the week before. That's hot. I accidentally skipped last week, so I actually have 2 weeks of crafty projects to talk about. So in my last video in this series, I showed you the finished dream sweater. I'll show you right here with Lena in it. The pattern's from Unit. I love doing the color work on it. I made it for my teenage daughter, and she immediately asked me when I was going to make a version for Nacho, since I made him a version of my super simple summer sweater. So anyway, I made Nacho a version of this pattern. I opted not to do it with sleeves and just make armholes. Here are his little armholes, because he's not going to be wearing this outside. I made it in the same 100% wool BC Garn Loch Lomond that I made hers in, not superwash. This is not an outside outfit for him. So the color work in this is actually knit bottom up, and then it has this seed stitch detail throughout. So I started at bottom up, and I just went like from just above where I wanted his arms to be up to the collar. So I did the color work like in the order of the chart, and then I just picked up stitches here, and then I went down. And in the other sweater that I did for him, I did like an extra piece on the back, like to cover his, like, not his butt, but you know what I mean, like to cover his back a little bit. But this one I opted to just kind of go even across and not do that in the underneath, and I think it actually looks super cute on him. I think I prefer this style on him. I'm not gonna do like the longer like butt flap part anymore. So anyway, I am madly in love with this. I love the way he looks in it. Here's a picture of him in it. It's so cute. I fully intend now on making Nacho matching sweaters as often as I possibly can. My second finished object I have this week is my Hedgehog Fibers Lip Hoof cardigan. I can't really show you here, so I'll show you here the back of it finished. I've worn it a lot this week. I'm wearing it today. I can't get over it. I love it so much. I highly recommend this knit. It is so fun. Not a super quick knit because there's so much purling, because obviously you're knitting it flat in one piece. So you're knitting on one side and then you're purling on the inside. So I think I mentioned in my last video, I actually learned Portuguese purling, where you put the yarn like around your neck. I'll look up the video where I learned how to do it, share it with you. But basically you have it around your neck so that your yarn comes from the front, and then you're just like flicking. You're not really doing the whole big hand gesture to purl with anymore. So that cut down some time, but it was a time consuming thing. I think it took me about 3 weeks to finish, where the other 2 sweaters that I made this year took 2 weeks each. So this was actually my first cardigan. I didn't even think about the purling. So the construction of it's interesting. Essentially, you're increasing for the back, the sleeves, and these front panels. And you can just increase more if you want like wider front panels. And then when you get to the sleeves, you just slip them onto, like slip the shoulder stitches onto some scrap yarn or whatever. And then you knit down the body of the sweater and then do the sleeves and the button band, and then you're done. The sleeves were neat to do because there is some, like, this on properly, there is like some increasing that happens here before you dramatically decrease there. So if you can see it better on this side, so you increase it and then decrease before you get to the cuff. And then of course you can make the poof be as dramatic as you want it to be. Next time I might make it be a little more pronounced. So the yarn, I talked about this a bit in the video where I had just started, but I had intended to knit the whole thing in Hedgehog Fibers yarn because it is a Hedgehog Fibers pattern and I love their yarn. But instead I used 2 Hedgehog colors and then 2 colors from Riverside, a Canadian dyer in Quebec. I know I'm always talking about. Not sponsored, I just love them. Here is Ballet from Riverside, and the darkest is Goa, also from Riverside. The whole cardigan is knit in fingering held double, and the fade is made by holding 2 colors at once. There are so many opportunities to play with color in this cardigan. You could even do like a scrappy cardigan version if you wanted to. I actually really, really love that idea, and I think it would look really neat. But I love scrappy projects like anyway. I've added it to my ever-growing list of projects to make because I think that'd be really fun. So after I finished these sweaters, I was itching to cast on something new. And yes, I do want to knit Nacho something out of this yarn. I'm not even gonna like think about making a cardigan for a dog because I'm not quite that extra, but I can make him a simple sweater with this yarn, and it would only take a few days, so that is definitely on like my short-term list of things to do. I know I mentioned before that I do social media for a local craft store here in Toronto, and I host their knit night every week. I do most of my job from home, but when I am working in person with ladies in the shop, it is always such a blast. So last week I helped out by knitting a sock for a photo shoot. And when I dropped it off, they were in the thick of preparing for the shoot the next day. So I stayed to help however I could, mostly weaving in ends and ironing, and it was so fun. Like, they were tired because they had been there all day, but I had a blast. I have a little footage of the three of us knitting in our favorite local coffee shop, like a few days before that, and a little more of the sock itself. The pattern hasn't been released yet, but I'll come back to it and link it once it is. So I'll show you that right here. This is how much I've done. When I got it yesterday, it was here. So I've done all of this, and I'm at the toe. I only have the toe left to go, and then I'm done. I love so many of the patterns from Unit, and I'm so excited to say, oh, Nacho wants to come visit. Hi, Nacho. Want to come say hello? You talk about how much you love your sweater? Oh, Mr. Nacho never visits during these videos anymore. The kids are having a good time in the other room laughing. You can probably hear them. Anyway, sorry. I love so many of their patterns, and I'm very excited to say that I'm working on a test knit of our newest sweater pattern. I'll show you my progress so far. I actually have to go run and grab it. It's the one thing that isn't here. Okay, I'm back. I'll show you my progress so far in just a sec. The pattern is called the Squares Sweater, and it's knit in Drops Air from Garn Studio. I'm not gonna lie, I was very excited when I discovered I was working with this yarn. I've literally been petting it since I first saw it at the store months ago, like wondering what I could possibly make with it, and now I'm using it. So the really neat thing about this yarn, actually I'm gonna go get it for you to show it to you. Okay, so here it is. And I just don't think that I can really capture how squishy, how soft, and just like how different it is. This is not gonna wanna focus. Sorry. So it's alpaca soft, but it's also impossibly light. It's 70% alpaca, 23% polyamide, and 7% wool. It's super light because of how it's made, and I hope I'm going to explain this right. Essentially, instead of spinning the yarn, the baby alpaca and merino wool fibers are air blown into a tube. I'll link some info on it down in the description so you can read more about it if you're interested, but it just makes it so light and so soft. The only other version of this sweater was knit in a gray with like a darker gray, almost black for the squares. And I went with this ruby red as the main color, and then coral reef for the squares. So we'll see how much project I can make this week so you can see more of it. Right now, it is literally just a collar. So my progress with this sweater so far does not reflect how much time I put into it at all. But I do want to show you just how nicely it knits up. It's so pretty and so soft, and like feels so soft, like it's gonna be not just a nice knit, but like a nice knit to wear, you know? So here's the story of the sweater so far. I did a swatch with the recommended needles, and it was too small. So I went up a needle size, still too small. And guys, I am not a tight knitter at all. So I went up one more size, but halfway through my swatch, I could just see that it wasn't gonna work because the fabric was so floppy, you know? So I agonized over what to do about this, and then I just went to my favorite circular needles. They're called Chiago. I bought them a few weeks ago to finish my Le Pouf cardigan, actually. I should do a whole separate video on these needles. They're amazing. Like, not only are the needles themselves smooth and like easy to slip yarn on and off of, but the tips are super pointy, so you're never fighting to get into like small spaces. And my absolute favorite part about it is the cord is not like a frustrating plastic curling mess. The cord is absolutely amazing. I cannot recommend these needles enough. This is not sponsored. I just love them, and I will never ever knit with any other kind of circular after knitting with these. Okay, so I just decided to do a swatch with those needles, and if it was still too small, and it was a little too small, I just planned to do like a size or two larger in the pattern to make up for it. And that's what I did. So I finally cast on for the collar and did that. And then when it came time for the short rows, I lost one of my wrap and turns. Like, I think it's because of the floofiness of the yarn. So I ripped it back to the collar and started the short rows again, this time with markers. And that's your PSA. Use markers for your short rows with floofy yarn because you might lose them. So that's where I am now. I finished the last of the short rows for the second time last night. And now I'm about to move on to the color work today. So this will be a lot more interesting next week. I also made a few puffs for my Hexie blanket that I just dropping stuff everywhere. So I made these puffs with some really cute leftover Hue Loco sock yarn. I actually made these stripy ones. I really like the stripes. I found that it's actually much easier to keep track of what kind of row I'm on, like if I'm on an increase/decrease row, or if I'm on like a straight knitting row. Like, I mean, it's not that hard to keep track, but it is totally mindless when you're doing the stripes. So I kind of love it. I might make this be like a thing and do lots more with stripes. I don't know. I've only been working on these on transit lately, and like when I had a day between finishing Nacho's dream sweater and starting on the square sweater, eventually I know I will have to dedicate some real time to this project, but for now it's just a little bit kind of here and there. This next week is very exciting for two reasons. I know that it's hot, and then I take a big swig of it even though I know that it's hot. I praised these cups from Starbucks before. Like, mine has, you know, Canadian things all over it. Chris's is just plain, but they're like, they stay so hot. If you have the lid on, they stay crazy hot. I have to take the lid off so I can actually drink it, but amazing. Anyway, okay, so this week is exciting for two reasons. The first is that Lane Magazine's 52 Weeks of Socks book is out, and it should finally have reached Canada by the time I go to the store for knit night this week. And I'm so excited, I can hardly stand it. I love knitting socks, as you probably know, and my stash is literally 90% sock yarn. Like, every single time I buy yarn with no project in mind, it's sock yarn. So I'm really, really excited to knit these patterns. They actually have a knit along on Ravelry that's aiming for a pair of socks a week, which I could totally do, but not if I'm also knitting sweaters and blankets and stuff. So the other thing I'm really excited about this week is the Satsuma Street Mystery Stitch Along. I've never done one before. I literally bought it the day that it came out. All we know is it's Alice in Wonderland themed, and honestly, I love every pattern I've ever seen from Craftnik. What are you doing? Sorry, Nacho's getting into things. Anyway, I love all her patterns, so I have no doubt that I'm going to love this one too. The embroidery floss color list is given at the start, and then every 2 weeks she releases a new piece of the chart, so you just cross stitch as much as you're given at a time, and then a couple weeks later another piece is released. So she also just released a beautiful spring pattern with bunnies. I'll show you over here. Like, how cute is this? I love it so much. I will resist until after I finish Mystery Stitch Along, but it's just adorable. I mentioned in one of the first episodes of this series that I wanted to make a Christmas decoration every month, so I'd have some new pretty handmade ones this Christmas, and that was even before Valentine's Day. And I had this idea of needle felting a little pom-pom and heart garland. I was going to actually hang it up like back there. But then I got really wrapped up in this cardigan, and I didn't really work on anything else. So this is springtime, like springtime themed bunny cross stitch, I think it'd make a fun spring decoration. I mentioned in one of the first episodes of this series that I wanted to make a Christmas decoration every month, so I'd have some new pretty handmade ones this Christmas. And that was even before Valentine's Day. And I had this idea of needle felting a little pom-pom and heart garland. I was going to actually hang it up like back there. But then I got really wrapped up in this cardigan, and I didn't really work on anything else. So this is springtime, like springtime themed bunny cross stitch, I think it'd make a fun spring decoration. Maybe I'll finally get to doing that this year. The only thing like that really that I have is a Halloween cross stitch of witch silhouettes that I love, that I made years and years ago in California. So anywho, I want to do that spring project, but I will hold off until after the Alice in Wonderland one is finished. Like, I really think I've reached that point where I have way more projects on my list than I actually like have time for. But I'm so in love with making stuff right now that I'll just keep plugging away at my list and sharing it with you because it's just fun to do. I've also been watching a lot of these knitting channels on YouTube and loving them all so much. And they have like an endless source of inspiration. Every time I watch a new one, there's a new idea they're doing that I want to do. Like, there are so many beautiful things to knit and sew and felt and like all of it. So anyway, so that's it for me this week. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions about anything that I showed you, please feel free to ask them in the comments, and I will link everything in the description that I talked about as well. If you want to follow along with my projects, also my recipes and my dog Nacho over on Instagram, you can find me there as Mrs. May Shank. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up to show some support. And if you're new here and you like these casual style vlogs, subscribe to my channel for new videos and hit the bell so you don't miss any. Thanks so much, guys. Bye.